Welcome to the College Admissions Process Podcast presented by Prep Expert. Prep Expert offers live online SAT and ACT courses with the best score guarantees, instructors, and curriculum. Go to prepexpert.com to guarantee your child's success. I'm also excited to share my book, Straight from the Admissions Office, a review of my biggest takeaways from the first few hundred podcast episodes. It's packed with direct insights from admissions professionals and practical tips to help students and their families navigate the college admissions process. You can find all of the information in the show notes. Welcome to The Cap, where we are here to speak with college reps and other professionals in the field of college admissions to help answer all your questions and guide you through every step of the process. So if you're serious about college admissions, you've come to the right place. Are you ready? Let's talk about it. And now, here's your host, Dr. John Durante. Welcome to The Cap, the College Admissions Process Podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome back Douglas Harrington, who's the Associate Director of Admissions at Binghamton University, of course, which is part of the SUNY system here in New York. Douglas, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing well, John. Thanks so much for having me again. I really appreciate the invitation and being back here.
I'm glad to have you back. And just for the record, I saw you not at one, but two of the NACAC conferences when it was in Baltimore and this
Yep.
past year when it was in LA. It's always fun to meet up with you in person, and I'm glad to have you back on the podcast. So my last interview with you and Binghamton University, Douglas, was back at episode 138, which is a very long time ago. That was released in July of 2023, and it received a ton of downloads, by the way, Douglas. So since the original release, what can you share with us in terms of what's new at SUNY Binghamton?
Absolutely. So I can't believe it's already been since 2023 since we did this last. It feels like it was just the other month. So, yeah, absolutely. Binghamton has really put in a lot of work to make sure that our students are succeeding here at Binghamton, and there's a lot of great things happening here. So, one of the biggest things that we have going on is that we officially have our School of the Arts, right? So that is a really great program that has launched under our Harper College of Arts and Sciences, where students interested in our arts programs. So we have our studio art majors, our theater majors, our cinema majors, our art history majors, and our music majors are all now under our official School of the Arts. So it's all we heard kind of responses from alumni and everything that have been in the workforce, and that students majoring in the arts, which are very important here at Binghamton, we're having a little bit of a difficult time after graduation because they didn't come from a quote School of the Arts. So we listened and we adapted, and here we are having our School of the Arts where we have some BFA programs involved with the School of the Arts as well. So it's just a really exciting time. Especially as someone who is a theater person myself, seeing our School of the Arts here kind of thrive, just getting off the ground here. So the admissions process has changed a little bit for those students interested in those types of majors to an audition slash portfolio based program. Um, so if you're a listener and you're thinking about those majors, just kind of keep that in mind when you're thinking about applying to Binghamton for those programs. But that is certainly one of the biggest changes and biggest updates that Binghamton has gone through since the last time I was on the podcast.
Well, that's fantastic. And I love how you talked about the fact that you listened to your students and adapted for them by adding a School of the Arts. Now, you mentioned that the application process is a little bit different because they're going to obviously have to add a portfolio. Any advice in terms of what students should be mindful of when putting together those portfolios?
Yeah, I mean, you just want to be sure to showcase yourself, right? Of course, I say this to every student about the application, right? It is the opportunity to brag about yourself. Like, don't be humble. Like, oh, like if you're choosing between two clips, but you sound better in this one, but like I think this one shows me, as a person, brag. Just throw in the best one. We want to see you at your best, because it's going to be the way that we get to know you, right? So, I always say throw in as much as you possibly can into that application, especially that portfolio piece too. Include your best clips, showcasing yourself in the best light, essentially.
Well, we appreciate that, Douglas. And absolutely, students, don't be bashful. You definitely need to brag as part of your overall application. And Douglas, I do want to ask again in terms of just the overall SUNY system. We have listeners that are here from throughout the United States and frankly, even beyond. So there may be some that are not quite familiar. So, what could you tell me about the overall SUNY system, which of course is the State University of New York?
Yes, the State University of New York, or SUNY, as Sean was saying, is what it's more known as, consists of over 64 different schools across New York State at a variety of different levels. So, 64 sounds like a lot. I know when I meet counselors on the road, especially in my out of state markets, and I kind of try to familiarize them with the SUNY system, and they're always caught off guard with how many schools are technically part of the SUNY system. Well, that's because it includes four different levels, right? So you have your community colleges, right? So if you're listening in Orange County, which is where I'm originally from, where you have SUNY Orange, or you have SUNY Ulster, Sullivan, Dutchess, or Nassau, whatever, right? They're all part of the SUNY system. So you have your community colleges, your base colleges with that. Then you have your technical schools, right? So your SUNY Delhi is an example of a technical school. SUNY Canton up north, for example. Your technical schools where they offer associates, they sometimes offer bachelor's degrees, but in a little bit more technical sense, where automotive technology might be a major at some of these schools. Those are your technical schools. Then you have your 4-year institutions, some more maybe well-known names like your SUNY Cortland, SUNY Oneonta, Geneseo, Oswego. To give you an idea, these are schools that offer 4-year bachelor's programs. But they don't typically offer your doctorate level, right? I think that's typically the distinction. And then you have your university centers or your research institutions like a Binghamton. Even your more specialized schools like Upstate Medical are all considered university centers because they are doctoral granting programs. So SUNY does consist of a variety of different institutions. So there's definitely a school for everyone listening in regards to finding a SUNY school that fits best for you. Of course, we'd love for you to come and be a part of the Binghamton community, but SUNY is very vast and can certainly help you get wherever you need to go.
It absolutely is very vast. Like you mentioned, 64 different schools across the great state of New York, covering every corner of this huge state. And I like how you broke it down. It's four different colleges, namely community colleges, technical schools, 4-year institutions, and of course, those university centers like the great Binghamton University. So, Douglas, what are some of your most popular academic programs that, of course, set Binghamton apart from other universities? And can you share any unique learning or even internship opportunities tied to these programs that really help students prepare for careers after graduation?
Absolutely. So Binghamton has a variety of different programs, right? We have actually over 130 different majors and programs, which is really, a really great variety for our students to kind of figure out exactly what they want to do, right? Because I guarantee you that most of the people listening right now don't know what they want to do, right? So there's always that exploratory phase, which is really nice because Binghamton was founded as a liberal arts college, right? So we have that strong liberal arts base here that is worked into all of our majors and programs that allow students to explore, which is really nice. So some of our programs are certainly our more popular programs. We do have some professional programs like our School of Management with our business administration and our accounting majors, right? That's where I actually graduated from. I'm a School of Management alum, right? With our both my bachelor's and master's in business administration from SOM. Um, but what's really nice, so for instance, with our School of Management curriculum, you're still getting a base of all of the different types of business that we have. So, like, I was a business admin major with a concentration, so we have different concentrations in marketing. I took a bunch of marketing classes mainly in my senior year, but I still took Introduction to Finance. I took management, Introduction to Management, these different base classes. I even took 2 accounting courses that is all worked into the curriculum to make sure that, hey, you know which one that you might want to do. The same with our popular engineering programs. You come in as an undecided engineer, and then you get to go through what we call our engineering design division. So it's a group of classes that all of our incoming engineering students take together, and it touches upon the 5 engineering majors before they declare at the end of their first year. The same with our Harper College of Arts and Sciences, right? It's our largest school, so It houses over 120 of our 130 majors. So all of our Harper students come in as undecided before you have until the end of your second year to declare. So having that liberal arts background, I think, is something that really sets Binghamton apart. And the way that we kind of lay our curriculum out for our students to allow them that flexibility, allow them that exploratory phase to make sure that they know which is what they want to do. So, and then there's definitely amazing, experiential learning internship opportunities that, become a part of the curriculum as well. A lot of internships are not required of students, but you will find 90+% of our students will, of course, graduate Binghamton with some sort of internship. Maybe because it is part of their schooling, like our human development major does have an internship component to it towards their senior year. But we have amazing career services on our campus, like our award-winning Fleischman Center for Career and Professional Development, that helps students get wherever they need to go in regards to internships. And we're always having amazing speakers and everything. We have MLK the third on campus,
That's awesome.
as just speaking on campus. So we have amazing that experiential learning, right here at Binghamton as well.
Well, I appreciate that. You talked about, first of all, the fact that Binghamton was founded as a liberal arts college. You mentioned your over 130 majors and programs. And I love how you talked about the exploratory phase and how there are many classes that students take together. I bet, Douglas, that along with what you do with your housing, which is a little unique, adds to the fact that your retention rate is 92%. That represents, of course, the percentage of students that return back to Binghamton after that freshman year. So, how do students find their sense of community at Binghamton in addition to everything that you mentioned? And what support systems are in place to help them transition from high school?
Absolutely. So, yes, of course, one of the biggest things that we want to make sure is that, like you mentioned, John, that transition from high school to college, we want to make sure that that transition is as easy as possible for all of our students. So, we want to make sure that our students feel comfortable and feel at home here, right? Binghamton will be a home for you for 3, 4, 5 years, depending on how long you decide to stay with us. So, we want to make sure that it feels like home. And, you mentioned the word community. And that is one of the biggest words that you can use here at Binghamton because we have such a thriving community here. We'll talk about the residential community in a second, but I think just the general community on campus, it is not a cutthroat environment. Students are not competing with one another that you might see at some other institutions. It is a very uplifting, welcoming community that we have here where students are really collaborative and supportive of one another. They love not only when they succeed themselves, but when their peers succeed as well. So, having that atmosphere on campus is really allowing our students to thrive here at Binghamton. So that's one way, right? And then we have the residential style that, we have at Binghamton where we are actually modeled after Oxford University in the UK. It's the Oxford system where we don't have residential halls just kind of scattered around campus. So we have these residential communities where it's about 4 to 5 different residential halls that cluster together to form our community, where each one has their own personality, traditions, dining hall, and its own sense of self. So when you come to Binghamton, of course, for our first year students do have to live on campus. Transfer students, if you are listening, of course, we love our transfer students, but you're not required to live on campus. So that is entirely up to you. But you come to Binghamton, you're living in our residential communities, and you already have hundreds of other people that you have a shared identity with because you're living in the respective community that you're in. So there's 5 different ones that range in size. Some are bigger, some are smaller in age, but they're all renovated and nice. Don't worry, you don't need to worry about that. Um, in traditions and even residential style, where we have corridor style living, we have suite style living. So there's a lot that makes them individualistic, which is really nice. But you know you have that shared identity which allows you to immediately start meeting people, and it's not based on major, it's not based on cohort, it's not based on anything really. First year students and anyone can live anywhere on campus, right? So other than that, we do have 2 apartment communities that our upperclassmen do will live in, their full apartments and everything like that. So it is one of those ways that you find that transition into Binghamton to be seamless, right? So Between that, other resources that we have, of course, you have all of the resources within Res Life, but you have our orientation, you have, our UFest, which is our university clubs and organizations. Over 400 of them will come and table and making sure that you attend their general interest meetings and everything. So lots of different ways and support services that we have on our campus to make sure that that transition from home to Binghamton is as easy as possible.
Well, I'm sure everything that you mentioned and so much more really adds to that 92% retention rate. And I like to ask this question because hopefully it's prompting students and their families to ask about what do the colleges or universities do to help students transition to whatever school that they're going to, right? Students are coming from so many high schools in state, out of the country. And so it's very important to be mindful of the different types of residential situations or orientation programs, or even, once you're on campus, what's going on to add to that community. So we appreciate, Douglas, that comprehensive answer. And what other academic and even personal support services would you say Binghamton offers to help all students, right, regardless of their learning needs, really achieve their full potential and navigate challenges during those college years?
Absolutely, yeah. We understand that not every student will come in equally, or what support services that they might need. So we have everything that a student might need, right? So of course you start with your basics, right? You have your advising offices, right, where each college, or within Binghamton or school, has its own advising office. So Harper College has its advising office. Watson College of Engineering has an advising office. So you have your advising offices, which is kind of like your first line of defense. If you have questions about your courses, if you have questions about your course sequences or whatever it might be, they are kind of your first line of defense, where you make an appointment with them, or you go to their walk-in hours, and then you kind of talk through what exactly you might need to help you graduate on time in 4 years or even less. I mean, I'm going to sidetrack a little bit. Binghamton is great on awarding credit from high school, so AP credit, IB credit, dual enrollment credit, A level credit, whatever it might be. Binghamton is really good at awarding different credits. So I, just to use a personal anecdote myself, as I mentioned, I'm an alum. I came in with 32 credits from high school,
Wow.
and I got my bachelor's in just 3 years from Binghamton.
Wow.
So I graduated a full year early. I stuck on for our fast track MBA program. So I got both my bachelor's and master's in just 4 years. So you have that flexibility when you come in with all of that credit, right? And making sure that all of that credit is allocated correctly is meeting with the advising office, right? So making sure that you're getting the courses that you need, and that you're not retaking something that you maybe already earned credit for, right? So there's your one of your first offices that you'll become very familiar with once you're here on our campus, right? But then we have lots of other offices, right? We have our tutoring center for students. It is free for our students to get tutoring here on our campus, right? We have both individual and group tutoring, so it is free for our students to obtain tutoring. But if you want to become a tutor, that is a paid position, so you do have that for you as well. There's lots of on-campus employment for students if you are struggling monetarily as well, financially. Lots of on-campus positions if that's something that you might be interested when you're here. You can become a tutor, you can work in food service, you can become a campus bus driver, which is a lot of fun. You can get a commercial driver's license. You can become a tour guide over here in our office. We love our tour guides. That's how I started here at Binghamton. So lots of different ways with that. But going back to the support services that we have. So we have our advising offices, we have our tutoring services, we have our Office of Students with Disabilities, right? Our SSD office. So if you do have any type of disability, learning or physical or anything like that, you can go to them and provide them with any paperwork, anything like that, in order to get any accommodations that you might need. So they have pretty much anything that you can think of. If you need extra time for your tests, if you need a note taker, they have special equipment and everything like that that they can give to you as well as part of your plan. So that's a great office as well. And then we have lots of other offices to making sure that that transition, like our LGBTQ plus center, our multicultural resource center. We have our licensed therapists on our campus, as well our counseling center, for our students to go if they are struggling with any mental health needs or anything, that they can go and make appointments with them as well. So lots of different resources on our campus for our students to go, and making sure that you know you're well taken care of, and again making sure that Binghamton feels at home here.
Well, that's phenomenal because it really does sound like you have something for everyone. And I'm glad you mentioned all of those different resources because it really should be a reminder for students to understand that schools like Binghamton really offer so much, but you have to seek it out, students. You have to ask. You have to go, for example, to that advising office, whether it's for advice in terms of what course to select for your second semester, or you want to make sure that all of those high school college credits that were earned or actually transferred into the great Binghamton University. Those are things and more that you really should be seeking out and asking. It's there, but you have to go and advocate for yourself. So I think it's a good message for the students and the families listening. And speaking of the students and families, Douglas, they want to hear about, of course, the application review process. So let me start by simply asking, what are the different ways for a student to apply to Binghamton? And of course, I'm talking about early decision, early action, regular decision, and is there a benefit in applying one way over another in terms of being admitted or even merit-based scholarships?
Sure, absolutely. So, yes, there's a few different ways to apply to Binghamton. First, John, I'll start with the different types of applications that you can use because, we're all familiar with probably one, but Binghamton actually accepts three different types of applications. So, of course, the one I was referring to, of course, is the common application, right? Most schools in the country and also around the world are also on the common application. So, Binghamton is a common app member, very easy for you to apply to Binghamton via the common application. But we are also on two different types of applications other than that. We have the SUNY application and we also have the coalition application. So the SUNY application is just what it sounds like. It is just for those SUNY schools. So if you just plan on applying to, just state schools of New York, then feel free to use the SUNY application. And then there's also the coalition application as well. So any one of those three, perfectly fine. We personally do not care. Um, in regards to the types of deadlines and stuff like that, so we have two, right? Johnny, you mentioned early decision, early action, right? We only have early action here. We do not have early decision. That is something that Binghamton does not offer. And you might be asking what the difference is, right? Because those terms sound incredibly similar and they are very similar, but there is one very big difference between the two of them. So, Binghamton has early action. Early action is a non binding decision, it is just an early application, right? So, early action, our deadline is November 1st, and we'll get you a decision by January 15th. If you are admitted in our early action phase, you still have until May to make that decision, right? It is a non binding commitment. You're just getting your decision sooner, which is really nice. Then there's early decision, which is what Binghamton does not offer. In regards to early decision is essentially very similar, where it's an early application, you get your application in early, etc. But if you get accepted via early decision, it is expected of you to attend that institution, regardless of what happens for scholarships or financial aid or whatever it might be. A lot of schools might even typically have you sign a contract of some sort that you are attending via early decision. So I would recommend, if you are applying early decision, you have to make sure that you want to go to that school. Do not waver at any point in time. If you even consider another institution, don't apply early decision because it's really going to limit yourself in regards to making that selection. But so Binghamton only has early action, as I mentioned, those deadlines, and we'll get you a decision by January 15th. The regular consideration deadline is January 15th, and we get you a decision by April 1st. So those are the two, types of rounds that we have here at Binghamton when applying. But I always recommend students apply early action because there's no harm to you in applying early action, right? We have our most spots available out of early action, and there's just no harm to you in applying early action. So if you can get your application into as early action, I always recommend it because it's then you get to know your decision by January, hopefully. Of course, we may offer you a decision of what we call an early action deferral, which just basically means that we're going to take your application and move it from the early action pool to the regular consideration pool. So we just need a little bit more time with your application, especially this year, um, with the SUNY Free Application Week that I think we're in our third year now of. We have seen quite an increase in applications that we get through, and very shout out to our team here at Binghamton for getting through all of those applications because it was quite the increase that we received. Um, so I always just, if you can get it in early action, there's no harm to that. So I always recommend it if you can.
Yeah, I mean, that was an amazing tactic, if you will, for the SUNY system to give that free application where I'm sure you're getting more and more applications each year, not only at the great SUNY Binghamton, but throughout the entire 64 school system. Now, you talked about your application types, which include, of course, the Common App, which is very popular, the SUNY application, and of course, the Coalition application. The deadlines, you talked very clearly about the fact that you do not offer early decision. Of course, early decision is a binding agreement. You do offer, however, early action, which is something that you recommend, as do I, because there's really no harm in submitting early. In fact, it's nice to submit early so that hopefully, students, you could actually enjoy your senior year of high school. The early action round is, of course, non binding. Your deadline is November 1st. Decisions are out by January 15th. And of course, you have the regular decision round. You also talked about a couple other things. You mentioned, should you get deferred? So, students, many times you apply early action, you get this thing that's called a deferral. That means basically that it's a not yet, but perhaps a yes later on. So they're going to put you in their regular decision round. So again, we appreciate the comprehensive overview. And so, Douglas, can you explain your holistic review process? You get thousands of applications, and what specific experiences the team in your admissions office looks for when reviewing those applications?
Absolutely. So, a great question, right? You're going to hear that buzzword a lot, a holistic review, not only at Binghamton, but a lot of other institutions, right? Where basically what a holistic review means is that we are taking every single bit of that application into consideration, right? So, if it's on there, that's why I go back to what I said earlier, where it's very important to brag about yourself because this is how we get to know you, right? So, you want to fill that application up because we are taking every single bit of that application into consideration. So it's not just your GPA, it's not just your test scores if you choose to submit them, because of course Binghamton is test optional. A lot of schools made that switch to test optional, and Binghamton was one of them. So we are test optional here at Binghamton. So it's not just going to be your GPA or your test scores, but your essay, right? Your letter of recommendation, your extracurriculars, your volunteer efforts, your class rigor is something that we definitely take into consideration here. Seeing that you're challenging yourself while you're in school, because Binghamton, we do have some high academic standards, and we want to make sure that, you're succeeding in high school, but you're also taking rigorous courses. We like to see that combination. So, of course, that's not the be all end all, right? Because, like I said, we conduct a holistic review. So there's not going to be one thing that we weigh more than another thing. We're taking all of it into consideration. So that's why when it comes to things like your extracurricular activities, fill it up. You put as much on there as possible, even if you have to stretch. If you're, home, you're at home taking care of a sibling or a grandparent or something like that, or whatever it might be. Really stretch it out, because there's about, I don't know, 10 or 12 spots that you can put on there. And I come across applications where they have nothing on there as extracurriculars. And we know that you exist outside of school. What are you doing? Like, even if it's just at home. So really try to fill it up as much as possible, because we do take every bit of that application into consideration.
Well, that's a great overview. Thank you so much. You made it very clear that you're not just about the GPA, you're not just about the test score. And of course, Binghamton continues to be test optional, as so many other schools are as well. I really appreciate how you talked about the extracurricular activities and to really, as you put it, stretch it out, fill out all of those slots, if you will, because, I believe actually it's 10 slots, but, if someone is only filling out two, and you're seeing the average, let's say, is, I don't know, eight, that's going to stand out. So you really want to include anything and everything, including, by the way, you mentioned taking care of a family member. Perhaps you have a job. Perhaps you have to get home students after school because you're the adult at home who has to get your younger siblings off the bus from elementary school, just as an example. Anything like that, you really need to fill it out. Tell your story. Obviously, you're doing something after school. Hopefully, you're not just playing video games after school all the time. But my point is, as Douglas pointed out, make sure that you have a comprehensive list under that extracurricular activity section. So the transcript is obviously a key component in terms of the academic review portion of the application. So, Douglas, how does Binghamton weigh course rigor versus GPA in the admissions process? In other words, not all GPAs are created equally. So, can you share what you look for when you're reviewing a student's transcript?
Of course, yeah, that is a great question, and one that I just kind of alluded to in the last one, where Binghamton, we love to see students challenging themselves, right? Binghamton can have a rigorous, academic profile here once you're here. Nothing to be scared of for those of you who are listening, right? It's still very, doable, right? Um, we do like to see students challenging themselves because they're going to make that transition to Binghamton's curriculum a lot more seamlessly than maybe a student who didn't really challenging themselves, right? So we want to see those APs. We want to see if you're in an IB curriculum and getting a full IB diploma. Kudos to you because I understand that's really hard. If you're taking dual enrollment courses and your school offers a course through, SUNY Albany or a super credit through Syracuse, Binghamton accepts that. So it's kind of twofold, right? You're not only setting yourself up really well to succeed here at Binghamton through the curriculum, but going back to those credits that we also offer, right? You're setting yourself up for success with that too, and saving you time and money and all of those credits that we then will transfer in for you. So it's kind of twofold, which is really nice for our students. But we do understand that not all GPAs are created equally, and we do take course rigor seriously into consideration when reviewing it. So but we also understand that not every school offers the same amount of advanced courses as other institutions. Again, this all comes down to that word holistic review. So we have school profiles, and over the courses of being here and our team being familiar with our schools that we get a lot of applications from, we understand what schools may offer 20 APs to a school that might offer 4 APs. And if a student is taking 3 APs out of 4 at a high school that only offers 4, and versus a student that is taking 6 or 7 APs at a school that offers 20, we might look at that student in the same light, and those students in the same light, because it's all of what's offered. So it's all part of that holistic review, not only becoming familiar with the student, but also becoming familiar from the school that they come from as well, because each school is going to have its own curriculum, and each school is going to have the things that they offer. So really kind of framing it around that way as well. But it is something that we do take into consideration very heavily in regards to the types of courses that you are taking. So if you take woodworking 3 times for 3 years, you know it probably might not be the best fit for you here at Binghamton. So you want to be cognizant of the types of courses that you are selecting when you are in high school.
This is your host, John Durante, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome back Sean Patel, who's the founder and CEO of Prep Expert. Sean, welcome back.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me. And I'm so excited to announce that Prep Expert is the official title sponsor of the College Admissions Process podcast. This has been a partnership in the works for a while now, and I'm so glad we got it off the ground. We're so excited to work with families, parents, students of the College Admissions Process podcast at Prep Expert to help them through our live online SAT and ACT courses not only improve their SAT and ACT scores, but help them get into college as well as win hundreds of thousands of dollars in college scholarships. Thank you so much for the partnership, and we are so excited to work with your families.
Thank you, Sean. And to learn more about how Prep Expert can support your child's academic journey, visit prepexpert.com today, and best wishes to all. Well, that's great advice. And I love how you explain that you understand that not every high school offers the same rigor. Some offer 30 AP courses, some offer all the IB programs that you could imagine, and some offer a lot less. There are schools that offer some, but there's restrictions in terms of what you can and can't take in 11th grade and 12th grade. So, there's probably over 20,000 public schools alone in the country, and probably there's not any two that are identical. So, it's very important what Douglas mentioned in terms of knowing the school profile. That's what they look at so that they know what it is that your high school offers. So it's great advice to ask your counselor for a copy of your school profile so you can see the context in which the admissions officers are reviewing you. If your school only offers 5 AP courses, someone who goes to a high school that offers 20 doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be at an advantage. based on the context of what your high school offers. Did you take on challenges? Did you build ramps over 4 years? They're going to look at that again based on what your high school offers. So I appreciate that insight. And we covered a lot in terms of the application. We talked about the extracurriculars, the transcript, the GPA, the rigor. Douglas, what are some common pitfalls students should avoid when writing those personal statements, right? That are so important because that's the one piece in the overall application where students could really let their personality shine. So, are there any pitfalls that they should avoid? And can you share an example of how a unique statement really elevated an application?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, certainly the personal statement is, I would say, definitely one of the more challenging things on the application from a student's perspective on how to make them stand out, right? We get thousands of applications, we read thousands of personal statements a year, and it is hard for students to kind of figure out how to necessarily stand out. One of the most common pitfalls that I see students make is accidentally writing their personal statement about someone else. That is something that we see a lot, whether it be a family member, a friend, something that has happened to this person that has influenced them greatly, which we definitely understand. But they talk about that impact in maybe the first paragraph or the last paragraph, and then the majority of the personal statement is about the other person. And that's not really giving us context for them, right? I, if you write about your grandfather and your grandfather's life and how they struggled and everything like that, that is giving me great context about your grandfather, but your grandfather's not the one who's applying, right? It's you. So you have to be careful with that. If you make your essay about the impact that someone else has had on you, you have to be careful on how you phrase and how you write that essay, because if you write it all about the other person, that personal statement is not going to tell me much about you, which is who we need to learn about, right? um, so that's one common thing that I see students do. Some topics that I see quite frequently, which I always tell students, if you can avoid them, great. If not, I would again work on organizing it and framing it in a way that might be a little different. So some of the top topics that I usually see in college essays include things like death, divorce, disease, sports, and injuries. Right? We completely understand, and me personally completely understand how much of an impact those five topics can have on students. And that's why if you do write about one of those topics, you want to frame it in a different way. Where the one that always, I may have even talked about this on our last episode, John, the one that sticks out to me, I read, I don't even know how many years ago at this point, but the student wrote about how his father had passed away. His father, big influence on his life, and obviously very traumatic for that student. And this is not me discounting any of, your experiences, students, with any of these topics, right? We understand that each of you has a story to tell, and that each one of these things could, be very impactful. It's just topics that we do see a lot. So, but that specific student wrote about the death of his father, but he wanted to go into our pre-law program. So he wrote it as an opening argument as to like a court case, or
Hmm.
whatever it was. And it was so, he related it back to what he wanted to study, and it was just written so thoroughly, like it felt like it was like almost like a TV script, like you were in a courtroom drama. Like it was just so well done, that is one that, like, that always sticks out to me as a student that again wrote about a death and wrote about someone else, but framed it on, he focused it all about the impact that had on him and that student, and then all also related it back to what he wanted to study. So that is just one way, an example of, a student doing that in a different way. I know students, it's going to drive you nuts on how, if you want to write about one of these topics, it's going to, it's going to keep you up at night on how to frame it differently. um so you just, something to think about, that you just don't want to blanket right about one of these topics. Again, sometimes you can combine a sports injury is also very common. It's not, you see that a lot as well. So just be careful with those topics. You want to set them apart. A great way to do that is even just formatting your essay in a different way. I say this to students a lot. It's always drilled in our heads, right, from elementary school. An essay consists of an opening paragraph, you have your body, and you have your conclusion, right? And as someone who, comes from an academic background, trust me, it's still drilled in my head. Um, One of the ways that it can catch our attention is if it is formatted in just the slightest way. Where I'll give you another example where I was reading an essay about a girl who wrote her essay about she writes everything in lists. She's a quote lister, and everything in her life is written in list form. So before I even read the essay, I opened it and saw two or three lists throughout the essay, and immediately, right off the bat, I said, "What are these for? What are the context of these? Why are these in here?" And I read that essay every word because it caught my attention right off the bat, right when I opened it. So I know, again, that's going to become some creative thinking for some of you on maybe how to do that and tie that in, but that is another example that I always give as well.
Well, I think those are great examples, and it's so awesome where, we're here pulling the curtain back and we're hearing from someone right from the admissions office talk about the fact that, first of all, I would imagine that you're probably reading 40 essays a day. And if you're constantly reading the same exact topic, and the themes that come up in the podcast episodes are two that really come up all the time, which is if you're talking about a family member, if you're talking about a sports injury, it's just the same essay over and over and over again. So I love the example that you gave because you have a student who unfortunately lost a parent, but he was able to write so articulately in terms of what it meant to him. It was all about him and then how it was related to the course of study that he was going to take on once at Binghamton. So that's great that someone was able to do that and really make it about him, because the other advice that we get from college admissions reps is that you don't want to write about grandma, for example, 90% of your essay and mention yourself maybe only 10%. It really should be the other way around. If you're going to talk about another person, maybe 10 to 15% of it could be about the person just to set the tone, set the foundation, but it really then has to be about you. What does it mean to you? Your thought process. Answer the question, so what? How do we get to know you, the student, better? But I also love that you're talking about the common essay themes, because students, if you use an essay theme that sounds like so many other students, hundreds, if not thousands, you're not really going to stand out in what we call a very competitive application pool. So you want to do something different. I love the example about the student who calls herself a lister, quote unquote, and she had lists, and how you articulated that, that grabbed your attention because of the dozens of essays that you're reading every day. That one stood out and you actually read every single word attentively. So I just want to thank you for the comprehensive review. And I hope that the students and parents are listening, because it's great insight in terms of how to approach that personal statement. So thank you, Douglas. And I was curious about your honors college, right? I know that you have a very robust honors college. So in terms of that, is it a separate application? Do students get invited to apply after their original application is submitted? And if they are applying, what are some of the things that they should be considering when trying to get into that honors college?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, the really nice thing about Binghamton and our honors programs and our special programs is that there is no application. It is automatic consideration. So, that is something that students, you don't need to worry about when applying to Binghamton. As long as you submit an application to us, you are automatically going to be considered for our programs here. So we do have a few of them, right? I will start with our scholars program, which is our quote honors college on our campus. It's reserved for the top 1 to 3% of the incoming class, and there's different things that come along with it, right? There is special scholars housing. So that is one that we do have. Talking going back to housing, where I said we don't, do it by cohort or anything like that. The scholars program does have housing. We have a couple floors in our New England college where they do live together. So you do have special scholars housing. There is priority registration. There's a guaranteed choice of major by the end of your first year. So there are a couple different perks, special excursions and networking opportunities and different things. So that is our scholars program. Like I said, it is reserved for the top 1 to 3% of the incoming class. So it can be a little bit more challenging to get into, but that is it is an invitation based program. So again, nothing that you need to worry about on your end. Then we also have things like our research programs, which is our first year research immersion program, and our source project, which we're only one of a handful of schools in the entire country that allows students to start conducting research right from your first semester on campus. So we are known as an R1 research institution here at Binghamton. We even have a Nobel Prize winner on our campus, right?
Hmm.
Stanley
Wow.
Whittingham, who invented the lithium ion battery.
Wow.
Yeah, very lucky to have him on our campus. So we are very big on research here. So we do have lots of research opportunities available for the students between FRI and Source. Source is a 2 semester program. FRI is a 3 semester program where essentially we've had students come in with zero research experience that have ended up being published by the end of their first year. So
Wow.
really amazing opportunities with that. And again, those are not um, programs that you apply for, they are all automatic consideration. So if we find that you're going to be a good fit, maybe you've done research in the past or you've indicated that you're interested in doing research, we could find that you might be a good fit and we will then invite you to those programs. So the first year research immersion program is going to be geared more towards those physical sciences and the engineering fields, while the source project, which we started a few years after FRI, is geared more towards the social sciences and the humanities, because we find that it's not just research is not just science based, right? Being an R1 research institution, we have research available in every single major. So um, we wanted to open it up to other students who might be interested in research, but maybe not fall under the FRI kind of umbrella. So it's been incredibly successful. Students thoroughly enjoy those programs, and it gets them really great experience with research as an undergrad, which a lot of schools don't even offer research until you're a graduate student. So really amazing opportunities with that. We do have some other scholars programs like our PwC and EY scholars in our School of Management. That is a program that you can apply for once you're here on campus if you don't necessarily get invited as a first year student. But we are the only school in the country that has partnerships with these companies for programs like this. So that just kind of goes to show students that we do have great connections for post grad and internships and everything like that as well. So really amazing honors programs that we do have here. But again, nothing you need to worry about, nothing additional, no extra applications or essays or deadlines or anything that you need to worry about. As long as you simply apply, you will be automatically considered for those programs.
Well, that's a great overview. And clearly, Binghamton offers so much for your students, not only in your classrooms, but beyond. We're getting close to the end here, Douglas. Before I get to the last question, I always like to ask, are there any questions that I simply didn't ask or a topic that I didn't bring up that you'd like to share with the audience now?
Yeah, absolutely, John. I mean, I don't think there's a specific topic that we didn't bring up, but I always like to speak from an alum perspective, right? You may, students listening, you might think, oh, he works in admissions, it's his job to talk about Binghamton and all that jazz, which is, you're not wrong. But don't forget that I am an alum. I spent 4 years here, and honestly, it was truly some of the best years I've had. I met a lot of amazing friends, and I attribute that to we were talking about the transition from high school to college and the support services and the residential life, and I attribute everything, all of my success at Binghamton, I attribute to that transition and being able to meet people here. I lived in our Hinman College, which is our smallest community on our campus. And it was super active. I was involved with our hall government, and I met a lot of amazing people through that. And I was involved with a student-run theater company on campus called the Hinman Production Company, and I met a lot of my close friends through that, where I've been in all of their weddings and everything like that. So some amazing relationships that I was able to form here while I was at Binghamton. So yes, it is my job to talk up Binghamton and to showcase how we are an amazing value, and that Forbes gave us the Public Ivy moniker again, which we're super excited about.
That's awesome.
So lots of different accolades that I can throw at you, but coming from that alum perspective of how truly incredible the university is, and how everyone that I've met here and everyone that I continue to meet here truly loves it here and continues to thrive. So Binghamton will be able to set you up, of course, post grad, all that, setting you up with internships and full time jobs, but your social life, your academic life, once you are here, will also really continue to thrive as well.
Well, that's awesome to hear the alum perspective, but also now you're in the admissions office. And obviously, Binghamton is so lucky to have you, as were we, on this episode. Unfortunately, Douglas, it does lead us to that last question, which always is, what are your top three pieces of advice that you would provide students and their families getting ready for the college admissions process?
Of course, right? That ultimate question, right? One of the pieces of advice that I always give is ask your questions, right? Don't be afraid to ask your questions. As someone who did not speak to their admissions counselor more than one time when I was searching and speaking directly for Binghamton. I can, still actually still good friends with my admissions counselor. He doesn't work for Binghamton anymore, but I know his name is George Zimmerman, and we're still, he still works in admissions, so we're still very good friends, which is funny. So I always walk up to him like, "You recruited me to Binghamton," but I maybe spoke to him once during my time, thinking about Binghamton. So ask your questions. You may think you know the answers, or you might hear answers from your friends. You want to hear it directly from the source because Reddit is often may not be the best source of information, which I know a lot of students maybe get their information from. So ask it from the source. We're going to be the best ones to answer your questions. Two, of course, visit, right? You want to get up, you want to visit your institutions, come to Binghamton, come visit, come see those residential communities that I've been bragging about, come see the different academic spaces that we have, come see the fact that campus, which I didn't mention, is in the shape of a brain, right? If you look at an overhead map, Binghamton is in the shape of a brain. So come visit, come experience everything that Binghamton and honestly, frankly, any institution has to offer, because again, you want to find that fit. You want to find the place that you're going to feel comfortable, safe, and at home. So you're not, it's going to be really hard to do if you don't visit. So make sure you do that. And three, utilize the counseling staff at your high schools, right? They're going to be almost just as knowledgeable as the source here, right? Of course, wouldn't expect them to know every single thing about Binghamton, but they are a great starting point to kind of, you know, help build your list, right? Talk to them about Binghamton, talk to them about other institutions that you might be thinking about. Utilize that counseling services in your high school. They are there for a reason, and they will help you with your college application as well. So make sure that you are, visiting them, making appointments with them, having one-on-one meetings with them, because they are an amazing resource that we work with as well. So we have those relationships with the counseling staffs. So it's a great place and a great resource to have just right down the hallway from your classroom.
Well, those are great pieces of advice. And I'm really happy because I know that this conversation is going to help so many students and their families. And I really hope that, because I know there's a lot of people that are interested in SUNY Binghamton. And I really hope that after listening to this conversation, it's going to prompt students and their families to come up with their own follow up questions for when they visit with you, either at a high school fair or on campus or what have you. But again, Douglas, we appreciate your time, expertise. Thank you so much. And I'm going to have you back again in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. I really appreciate the invite. And yeah, always have me on. I'm more than happy to.
Fantastic. And I look forward to seeing you at the local college fairs and, of course, at the national conference for NACAC. Take care, all, and best wishes and good luck with the college search. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the CAP, the College Admissions Process Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please don't forget to tell a friend and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. I am your host, John Durante, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the CAP. Hey, podcast friends, if you've been enjoying the College Admissions Process Podcast, I'm excited to share my new book, Straight from the Admissions Office, Insider Strategies for College Applications. It's packed with insights and tips from over 250 podcast episodes with admissions professionals designed to make the college process less overwhelming. Whether you're a student, parent, or college counselor, it's a valuable resource for navigating the admissions process. By grabbing a copy, you're also helping to support the podcast. The links are in the show notes. Thank you, and best wishes to all with the college admissions process.